Well, hello, and welcome to episode 240 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, if you go back to 1999, we were getting ready to enter our senior year of high school, I believe, and a little film came out. It was the little film that could, and the little film that could did a lot of big things. Arguably the first like virally internet marketed film. Was it even a film? Was it a real story? We didn't know. Young impressionable Brian Michaela didn't know. We thought it was the real deal. We thought that this documentary was where it was at, and this documentary is where it's at in 1999 and in 2025. Today we're talking about the Blair Witch Project.
We are. And so Brian, I love to tell this story because it was my senior year and this movie came out like right around my birthday. Because I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, and so it had been shown at like the Sundance Film Festival and stuff earlier that year, and it had kind of gone quote unquote viral in
Mhm.
the summer, but it didn't like have its wide release until October of 1999. And I have never been so scared after watching a film. I've never cried from fear before. And I don't know if I've cried from fear since watching this movie because I absolutely did think it was real. This film is so special, and it's not even because of the film itself. Like just the whole kismet of like the timing of how it was made, how it was marketed, how they portrayed all of the actors, how they created the film in the first place. But like the plot almost gets like a third or fourth or fifth kind of seat to all of these other things that kind of
Mhm.
created this phenomenon that is the Blair Witch Project.
Right, yeah, absolutely. The plot is indeed very simplistic, right? Because the plot is basically the plot of making this film, right? I guess it gets into its own kind of genre, which it didn't invent, but largely is pointed to as kind of the crowning achievement from this genre, and got spun off and pointed to and referenced in a lot of films, especially coming right off the tail of 1999. But we're going to talk about that. But before we do that, we need to mix up a cocktail that is worthy of any Burkittsville witches that might be lurking about. So let's do this, Michaela. Let's grab some vodka and bourbon. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back to mix up this week's drink.
So, Brian, I probably needed a stiff drink after seeing this movie the first time because it was absolutely terrifying to me. And I wanted to find something that was very like scary, like weird and off the cuff, something that I never would have put together. And I don't know about you, but vodka and bourbon generally don't mix. But we found a cocktail
Generally,
from geekswhoeat.com, and it's called the Black Eyed Stickman. And it is really kind of a neat looking cocktail. One thing, geekswhoeat.com, hit me up. If you hear this, I want to know where you got your little cocktail stick because it literally looks like the Blair Witch Stickman thing.
yeah.
I tried to find it because I wanted to recreate it, and I'm also like, I just love that, and I thought it was so great. I have no idea how they made it or if they bought it somewhere. It's really
What you
cool.
do, you get a tent, you go out into the woods in Maryland, and then you wake up in the morning and there's one outside. Just
There's
waiting
one
for you.
outs.
That's how
It's
you get it.
outside waiting for me, but you never get out. That's the problem. It's that
That
once that happens, you're not leaving the woods. You're
that's
you're not leaving the woods ever
you're
again.
you're never finding your car. You're not leaving the woods. Absolutely. So apparently, this cocktail is built off of kind of a base of a cocktail that's famous from Maryland, which is why they picked it. It was called the Black Eyed Susan, which is a
Mm.
reference to the state flower of Maryland there. And this cocktail is kind of a riff on that. So I'll talk a little bit about the original cocktail after we mix one of these up because it's pretty simple to do, right? These are things that you probably have, and if you listen to Drink the Movies or if you're personal friends with Michaela, she's probably given you a bottle of Saint Germain somewhere along the line, just so you always have one if she comes in for a visit. So into a shaker tin goes 1 1/4 ounces of vodka. 1 1/4 ounces of bourbon. Nothing fancy here because you're mixing the vodka and the bourbon. So go ahead and 1 1/4 each of those into your shaker. 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, a half an ounce of Saint Germain, and a quarter of an ounce of simple syrup. Take that, throw in a dash of aromatic bitters. You could probably use an orange bitter and get away with that as well in there. Shake it with some ice and then strain it into. I like to do mine into like a little small like martini glass kind of a thing. You could certainly do that. You could do it over ice, which is where the inspiration cocktail, the Black-Eyed Susan. That one's served over ice. So either way, if you want this straight up or if you want it over some ice, do that. Sip and enjoy. Michaela, vodka and bourbon, not ingredients you normally see in the same cocktail. What did you think about this pairing? What did you think about this cocktail?
So I was really scared at first because I was like, I don't know, this might not go well. It looked really cool. But I gotta
Michaela was in
say,
a tent recording
I'm,
her apology to me,
I was
late
like,
at
I'm so
night.
sorry. I made you this drink. I'm scared to taste it. I'm scared to swallow it. I'm scared to vomit it up. Yeah, this is actually pretty good. Now, I have to tell you, I was a little concerned about the simple syrup situation because a quarter of an ounce, like how much difference could that make? It makes a difference. Let me just tell you,
Mhm.
it's really important because if not, it's that sweetness you really need to balance it out, or else it's just too, I don't know, it's too much something. It's not really bitter or sour. It's just, I don't know, but the simple syrup makes it. You want to use a very plain vodka. You want to use a bourbon that's like not super reserve or toasted or, any of
Yeah.
that because that's going to just really muddle it. And that's not what we're looking for here. Simple is best. I actually really liked this. I thought by the end, because it wasn't, as I was drinking it, it didn't, it got warmer, right? I like
Mhm.
it when it was
Sure.
really cold. So I would say, if you could even serve it with like an ice ball that to keep it nice and cold because again the bourbon it I don't know, I don't like warm bourbon, that's just not my thing.
Yeah.
So that got a little angsty at the end. It's kind of acidic and hot and I didn't love that.
Yeah, I think having it served over ice, I think, is going to go a long way in making this taste. I don't want to say more palatable, but certainly more refreshing tasting
Mm,
because it's going to keep the vodka cold, which is nice. It's going to keep the bourbon cold. It's going to get some ice melt in there, which is going to help kind of minimize the fact that there's literally 1¼ ounces of vodka and 1¼ ounces of bourbon in this thing. But no, I thought that it was nice. I thought that it had a really good kind of sweetness level to lemon juice ratio between just a paltry amount of simple syrup, but then the Saint Germain is basically kind of like a simple syrup in its own right in a lot of ways. So that certainly is good. And then you can garnish this with some orange peel and a Luxardo cherry, right? So it'll look like a little kind of like creepy eyeball in there. So
mm,
that's good. That's
mm.
good too. Let's. I just want to make mention here of the Black-Eyed Susan, which is the cocktail that this is kind of riffing on here. As I mentioned, it's kind of the state cocktail of Maryland. It is served at the Preakness horse race. Is that what it's called? The Preakness Stakes.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Which they run in late May. So it's really gearing up for spring here. So kind of the difference is it's still the same. It's the mix of the bourbon and the vodka. But instead of the Saint Germain, we're talking 1 ounce of peach schnapps and then a couple ounces of orange juice and sour mix, right? So it's basically the addition of the peach and the orange, and that actually sounds really, really good. That sounds nice. That sounds good and springy. And I think that this captures the taste and inspiration of the Blair Witch, right? It's a little intense, right? Maybe
Mm.
that shaky camera, maybe Heather screaming at you is going to be a little jostling. This cocktail is also a little jostling, but once you settle into it, it's really good, and there's some good stuff to be found there. So, any parting thoughts on this? Do you want to mix up a Black-Eyed Susan next, Michaela?
Yeah, I do. I actually really do. And then we need to pick, I don't know, maybe for the lobby bar. That would be a good idea. I'd
There you
like to do that
go.
because I don't think I've had that before.
No, absolutely, and that sounds pretty good too. So, thank you so much, Two Geeks Who Eat, for their cocktail inspiration here on this one. And let's do this, Michaela. Let's go ahead and we'll mix up another one of these. I think it's worthy to have another one, and that'll be just long enough to get through the film, which is pretty short. So, let's do that. Let's mix up another drink, and we'll be right back to chat about this week's film, The Blair Witch Project.
I can see you.
I'm real excited about this. Thank you for
I'm
the
very
opportunity.
glad.
This area's been haunted by that old woman for years.
I don't know why you have to have every conversation on video.
Because we're making a documentary.
Not about us getting lost. We're making a documentary about a witch.
I
We're
don't.
lost. Admit that first.
No, I know we're not lost.
They're all over the place.
So how do we know it was people?
Well, even if it wasn't, I'm not going to play with that either.
Spoiler warning for the Blair Witch Project. If you've not yet seen this film, you're going to want to do it on an empty stomach. I'm just going to warn you now. But we're going to talk about all the things that happen in this movie. And I don't know if I would call them spoilers, but we are absolutely going to spoil the movie. So if you've not seen it, do yourself a favor. Go watch it. It's iconic. It's important. Go make yourself a black-eyed Stickman because it's worth your time. And then come back and we can chat about all things the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you haven't seen it, you've certainly had plenty of time because it came out in 1999 and it was parodied and paid homage to to the end. So if you don't know how this ends, and spoiler, you get told right at the very beginning of the film, right? They find these kids' tapes. So bad news for them. This was directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, and it stars Heather Donahue, Joshua Leonard, and Michael C. Williams as the wannabe documentary filmmakers who find themselves lost in the woods, who we all thought in 1999 were real, actual documentary filmmakers. Turns out they were just actors playing themselves in this documentary, Michaela. Um, Now, there was a documentary about this, which was also fake, that we saw, that we were led to
Yep.
believe was real. There was a website that you could go to and learn all about the witch from Burkittsville, Maryland. You could do all of these things. We were led, as the general public, to think that this was, in fact, a real Blair Witch Project.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now and I want to point out that is not fair. Okay. And I think they stopped doing this from an ethical perspective because it was not okay. All right. Because it was on like the Discovery Channel, Brian. It wasn't
Oh
on
yeah.
like it was
Hmm.
or like Science, the Science Channel or
The Science
something. I
Channel,
mean, I
yeah,
don't even
something,
have
something.
cable. I don't even have cable. My boyfriend at the time, Brad, wherever you are, hope you're all right. Love the green hair. He was like, I know you're really into this. This looks really spooky. I taped it for you, right? Because I didn't have television, right? And because I lived in the middle of the woods, okay,
Yeah.
and we had no signal. Okay, I was lucky to get the Oscars every year, right? But that was it. So I watched this mini doc, like the documentary before I watched the Blair Witch Project. And
Mhm.
so as I'm watching this, I am actually believing that this is real footage. They talk about where they found it. It was like encased in the walls of this building that they only see the foundations of, this excavation crew that are looking into like what happened to the children, what happened to these three, young adults. And it is terrifying. And so you either go in knowing that that has all happened or you go in with fresh eyes. But either way, you absolutely are led to believe that this is a real thing.
Yeah, and it certainly, I mean, it starts off that way, right? Because it comes up and it tells you basically that this film footage was from 1994. They found it, as you mentioned, kind of, in this building that they could, just barely see like the foundations of, still standing. And at this point, it's 1999, right? It's 5 years after the fact. So you're like, oh my gosh, is this really like actually the case? And I guess when this premiered at Sundance, it said like in the credits for the film that these three people were deceased as part of this filmmaking kind of a thing that happens. But my favorite, I don't know if it's my favorite part about the film, but I really love how it kind of takes the time to set itself up as this actual like documentary, right? Like you meet these kids, right? So we meet the three there. Heather Donahue's kind of assembled this team, right, with Joshua Leonard and Michael C. Williams, who are coming together to make this documentary, right? Like it, and you get from the start, you realize this is kind of Heather's story, right? This is something that she wants to do. She's recruited these people who, it's really does a nice job of being vague enough where are these people that Heather knows, are these her friends, are these people that she knows from like some sort of like film school, are these people that
Mhm.
she put an ad out in the newspaper to hire? Like it's pretty ambiguous as to like what the relationship between these three people are, and that's really nice. And then they get on the road and they drive to Burkittsville, Maryland, and they do kind of the building blocks of the documentary of interviewing the townspeople. And I really love that kind of as the premise of the setup, right? Because it really gives you a real sense that this was, intended to be a real actual documentary.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have two cameras, right? So Heather's got one. It looks like Mike is usually, or sorry, Josh is usually the one handling the other. And it's interesting to me because either they're really good actors and they were acting this way, or they're not very good actors and they were acting this way. Either way, it really works because they're like scripting certain things and then they're showing it and then they're like, like one of the first places they stop is the cemetery and they're trying to, Heather is trying to sound like she knows what she's talking about and be ominous, kind of like William Shatner, or Robert
Mhm.
Stack from Unsolved Mysteries. And it's not quite hitting right because she's like 18, she's real young. And it's
Right.
like, nah, this isn't as scary yet as you think. And then the footage that they show of all these different people, you know, um, and some of them are like, oh, I've got this story, and oh, I've got this story. There's a mom of a kid, and the kid is like stops talking because it's so scary, and she's like, it's not real, it's totally real. I love that. But all of the like they go out into the woods, like this stream right beside, I guess, the parking lot where they were, and they see these two
Hmm.
fishermen, and they're doing all the things that you would think you would have to do, like, hey, do you agree to be on film? Do you agree
Hmm.
to let us interview you? And some of it goes really awkward and stupid, but it's footage that we're supposed to be seeing that, they would inevitably cut and only keep the good stuff, right? So it's
Right. Hmm.
really ingenious in the way that it's created, because some of it you're like, I don't know why this seems really dumb. This story seems really stupid. And then later you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's why. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the most part, this film was largely unscripted. There was kind of a story outline, that these three actors were kind of meant to hit. But I assume that most of this first kind of setup bit was probably scripted out at least somewhat, right? Because you have these people coming in as the town folks. You mentioned, the mom and with the little kid there who's telling the story. You have the girl that's working at like the diner who's kind of telling her story, and we get a couple of different tales here about this alleged witch that is, residing in kind of the woods in or around Burkittsville, Maryland. So, you get the story. There was like the old hermit guy who murdered a bunch of kids, right? Kind of took them down into the basement two by two, and killed one while one was looking into the corner, right? Didn't want to be watched committing these horrendous crimes, right? We learned that one of the fishermen is like, I don't believe in any of that stuff, except, oh yeah, there was this there was this little kid that got lost in the woods and turned up like a bunch of time later and saw this witch that was floating, and oh yeah, it was like right over by that tree over there, so all this like spooky stuff is getting us set up. And the team of documentary filmmakers have this now. They're like, okay, we kind of have some background on these stories. We can go try to, kind of find these things that, some of the locals were telling us, some of these things that we'd read. We can go into the woods, film those, see if anything happens, right? At least get some footage. It'll be nice for the documentary. So they gear up and they head out into the woods. And I have to say, these three do not look, that well prepared to spend a bunch of time in the woods, because that wasn't really the idea, right? Just go in, get some footage for like one night overnight, have fun, hang out in the tent, drink, whatever, out in the woods, and then you go home. That was the plan, anyways.
Yeah, they make it sound like it was just a quick weekend away, right? Like even at the very beginning, Heather's videotaping herself and she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna have this long weekend. We're gonna try and get some stuff together. I'm gonna do this documentary. It's gonna be no big deal."
Yeah, I think like Josh, I have to be back at work on, Monday morning, so.
Right, right. I mean, but you lose track of how many days they end up out there. You're like, gosh, is it day 17? Have they starved to death? I mean, because you see them again, like they're all together, and Heather is starting to get flack already for like, hey, put the camera down. We're getting food. Like, what are you doing? And she's like, I just wanted to make sure I understand how the camera works, and I want to get some good, I want to get some good footage. So they want to go to this place called Coffin Rock, I think it was called.
Mhm.
And because apparently there were like five men who were found like tied together and disemboweled. And then whoever found them ran off and told the church folk. And then they all showed up and then all the people were gone, but there was blood everywhere and it was really scary. And they were like, oh, it's signs of witchcraft. So she wanted to show that. And we were able to see that in like the first day. They're able to
Mhm.
find it okay. And then they're walking back and they're like, hey, we can't find the car. This is a problem. Now, for anybody listening who has no idea what we're talking about, this was 1999, okay? So we didn't have GPS and we didn't have cell phones like at all, apparently. Like we really didn't. I mean, I did in 1999, but apparently they didn't, because this was 1994 is when they were supposed to be in.
Mhm.
So there was no help coming. They had a map and she had like a compass, and the whole time they're giving her crap about it because she's like, I know where we're going. I know where we're going. We're just going to go this way. It's right over this hill. And so every time though they go to sleep, something weird happens. So like the first night, there's all these sounds like sticks breaking. I
Mhm.
mean, that's what it sounded like to me. And then they wake up the next day and they're like, well, that was weird. Um, and every time they wake up, something has happened. So like the second night, they wake up and there are these three like stacks of rocks like all around their tent that they never noticed before. And it's funny because this is where I think the psychological piece of it starts to really set in, where they're like, were they there? And we just missed
Right.
them
Hmm.
and we didn't
Yeah.
notice. And they're not like best friends, right? We don't, they say that they barely even know Mike. So Mike is immediately like, look, Heather, if you don't know what you're doing with the map, you need to figure it out. Like this isn't cool. Like, and so tensions are really getting high because they keep going and they're not finding anything,
Hmm.
you
Yeah,
know?
one of the things that I really liked in rewatching it here, just for the purpose of the pod, and I was watching it a little bit more mindfully, and you do in the tent, you hear like some sticks breaking and things like that, but it's not like overly loud. Like it doesn't sound like something is right outside of the tent. Like you're like having to stretch to hear a lot of this stuff. So really it's kind of their reaction to the sound. So then you're left wondering, are they really hearing these sounds? Is it really just playing in the psychology of what happens when you get lost in the woods? Because that certainly is true. But yeah, they wake up each morning as they're lost out in the woods to a little bit more and more signs that they are not alone in the woods. You mentioned kind of the stacked rocks. They get up, after walking for the car, they end up going through this kind of like grove where all those little like stick figure people are hiding or hanging from, which is very creepy. And then, the next morning they find a bunch of those outside of their tent until finally one of the crew goes missing. Josh goes missing, and that's going to lead them out of the tent. And that's really when things start going bad.
Yeah, it's like 3 days in or 4 days in, and Josh is starting to really kind of lose his mind a little bit. You feel like he's like going off and crying. And there's a scene where, of course, Heather's trying to film everything, and Mike is trying to explain to her, uh, have some empathy. Like he's losing it. We're all really tired. We don't know where we are. We keep going around in circles. Like I've never thought that I would be so scared of someone saying it's the same log.
Mm,
But when
hmm.
they keep going over this river and they find the same log over and over and over again, and they're like, oh, it's not the same log. And then they're like, it is the same log. And they realize that like they don't know, they keep going south or they keep going north or they keep going east, and nothing is happening. And then when Josh disappears while they're sleeping, Heather and Mike wake up and he's not there, and all of his stuff is still there, but it's covered in this weird slime. There's like that night as well. Before they all go to sleep, they look, and it looks like something like kind of tries to touch the tent or attack the tent, and so they rush out into the night, and they're all screaming. And this is 1994 equipment, so it is grainy as hell. It is not easy to see. There's no infrared. There's no night vision. You're like, what are you doing? Because they've got like a flashlight and they're running and she's screaming, and it's like, what are they gonna find? And you see, like, you think it's a shadow or something, and apparently it really was a person, like in all white, like so that they could kind of be seen. But like
Hmm.
again, you're terrified for them because they're completely at each other's throats, and then there's only two of them left because they can't find Josh, and they're
Yeah.
screaming for him, and uh,
Yeah, because Josh goes missing, and yeah, I mean, part of the appeal of the film, right, is it is, it does look like a couple of kids went out into the woods to film this thing on the little handy cam and stuff. And I love the very stark contrast of any time they fire up like the actual like good camera, like when they're walking through the grove, and you have all of the stickmen are hanging up there in the grove, and they have Josh turn on the actual like good camera, and it goes from Heather's shaky cam to that, and it's like the stark crisp like black and white imagery, which is really nice, converts to hers, which is all super grainy and shaky, and moves around a lot. There's even like a stretch, and it feels like it's a super long time. I mean, it's probably only about 30 seconds of the film, but where she has the camera on and it's not pointing at anything. So I mean, it's just like black, and you can see kind of like this like light kind of like fuzz out of it, like she set it down like on top of a blanket, and stuff like that. So I mean, that really builds in this air of authenticity that the film had, which is part of the reason why it was so successful and so easy to like hoodwink those of us in 1999 that this was a real actual thing that was filmed. But yeah, bad news. Josh goes missing, right? They chase out after him. They get back and realize that the camp has been ransacked. So what are Heather and Michael to do at this point, right? They basically had their fill of each other. They've had their fill of being out in the woods. Josh is gone. They have no idea like where to even begin looking for Josh. Michael's like, we can't even find the car. How are we ever going to find Josh? And yeah, that makes sense. That makes
yeah,
sense.
that makes sense.
So they end up going on their way until that night, and they hear his voice out in the woods, which is going to lead them to their final destination, their final resting
Yeah,
spot, as it were.
as it were. Yeah, they hear him, and I don't know if it's the next morning, like bright and early, or if it's earlier that day. Um, but Heather discovers this bundle of twigs right outside. They hear. I think it's the next morning.
I think it's the next
Um,
day. Yeah.
yeah, so they hear him. They're like, "Tell us where you are." It's so terrifying, and they are using. Heather Donahue is has changed her name since this, but that was her actual name, and they did that deliberately so that when people were so scared, they would use the names that they would be given, so they wouldn't mess up and call each other the wrong name. We find out later, but like during this, they're like, "Tell me where you are, Josh," and they're screaming for him, and he sounds like he is being ripped to pieces. Like, and it's coming from all directions. You don't know where it's coming from. They can't find him, and the next morning, there's like this wrapped. Bunch of twigs that are right in front of their tent, like a present. Like, here you are.
Hmm.
And at first, Heather is like, Mike, don't look at that. That's stupid. It's probably gross. And it's obviously like wrapped in clothing. And you get this super sinking feeling. But later she goes and she takes her camera and Mike is off doing something else and she opens it up. And there are these like bloody teeth inside of this like wrapped piece of clothing that is Josh's shirt that he had been seen wearing the entire week before. So
Hmm.
she loses her mind. She it is so terrifying because she's shaking. And so later, when Mike sees her and she's trying to get her pack on, he's like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm just tired and I'm cold and I want to go home and I'm scared and I don't like this." She does not tell him, "Hey, I just found our friend's teeth in this thing. I think this is real." But so they keep going and they decide they're going to walk at night, which sounds totally like not the right thing to be doing. If it were me, I don't know what I'd do. I probably just have died of fright by the end of the second night.
You'd have,
But
you'd have done
they,
the same thing that Josh does on day two. He's like, I'm just going to lay under this tree. So just when you find someone, tell them that I'm under this tree with the one with the vine.
right, the one with the vine. But they come across this old dilapidated house. Now they have been walking for like it's like 6 nights at this point. Like it's a long time that
Yeah.
they've been walking and walking and walking, and they keep coming across. It's like the Smallville of a horror, woods situation because they keep falling upon the same area of a tree where that log is, right?
Right.
But
Hmm.
somehow they find this old dilapidated, like hollowed out cavernous 2 or 3 story. It's a 2-story house with like a basement.
Yep.
And so they start to go inside it. They've both got their cameras and it is terrifying. Like I wouldn't go in it because it looks like it's going to fall down any minute. I mean, just from a logic perspective, but they think that they hear Josh. And so they go in and they start going up the stairs and it's the second story is when I lose it. I lost it the first time I saw it and I lost it the second time. You see these black handprints, like kids' handprints all over the walls.
Hmm.
It's scary as hell.
Well, the thing is, we don't know if they look black, right? Because they're filming, with the bright light of the camera or either the night vision. So we don't know if they're like inked hands, if they're like bloody handprints. You don't know, right? Because
Yeah.
the imagery is, all captured, via these cameras. So
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. So thanks. Thanks for that. I was like, that's black tar. No, it's probably blood. So they go up in the front, they go up to they're at the very top, and all of a sudden, Mike is like, I hear Josh, and we don't hear Josh, but he's like, I hear him. He's downstairs, he's in the basement, and he rushes down, and you see like the camera shifting and moving around and shifting and going down the stairs, and you see the wall of hands, and you see, this end kind of really gross looking basement full of nothing, and then the camera moves and then you hear Heather screaming like as if she's watching someone being killed right in front of her. She's like screaming as she's also running down the stairs and through the past the wall of all the hands and past the old dilapidated fireplace, and then she goes down and she sees, well, the camera shows Mike standing with his face in a corner, and then she just quits screaming. It's deafening silence. The camera falls and then it ends. It's the most terrifying thing ever. And I have never been so scared in a theater. I literally cried. I was so scared
yeah,
watching this for the first time. Hmm.
yeah, it is. It's very stark. It is very frightening. The imagery of it is frightening, and then yeah, for it to just end so abruptly there, kind of witnessing this thing that one of the townspeople had told them had happened by this, kind of old hermit character, way back in the 1950s or whatever the case was. So yeah, that's it. That's it. And then it ends, right? The film itself is only about an hour and 22 minutes long. So yeah, I mean, it builds so much on your psyche, I guess, in a lot of ways. Obviously, kind of a completely different sort of like genre or like methodology of making films to like The Thing, but I mean there's so much there that's going on, mentally between these characters, not only at night when they're meant to be, kind of hearing these things, and like you as an audience member are like also like listening for these things. You're like, was that a stick that broke? What was that? Was that a real thing? Did I hear something? Because they're acting like they heard something. Did I hear it? Did I miss it? Was it there? Did they hear that? I don't know. So you have that part. Then you also have the part during the day where just, kind of their psyches as, being tired and, not sleeping all night and sleeping in a tent and being, with these people who are growing more and more untrustworthy and more agitated with each other, kind of through the days, and how like that, I guess that cycle of like madness grows in someone, and then yeah, for this very stark and dark ending. I want to talk about the kids here just a little bit. Heather Donahue got a lot of like flack, I guess, kind of after this. I mean, the movie was extremely well received. We'll talk about that here too, but I actually really like Heather Donahue here in this film because I think that she's excellent. Like everything that happens feels very like kind of natural, like very little of it, knowing now that we know that it wasn't a real actual thing, right? That was happening to these people. Like none of it really felt like it was like that pushy or that like over the top or like that cringy. Yeah, you have the scene of her like giving, kind of this monologue into the video camera, basically apologizing to all of their parents for getting everyone into this situation, and it feels like very heartfelt and very emotional. So I don't know. Was there any highlights from any of these three actors here who were portraying themselves in a real documentary about a fake thing?
I I mean, I thought the acting was amazing considering I thought it was real. And like again, they seem real young because they are. They seem like unsure of what to do because they were. I mean, I don't know if me I mean, she's supposed to be maybe they're in their early 20s, maybe they're in their early 20s.
Hmm.
Um but there's no way I would have been, now it's easy to be like, well, just follow the river or just do this or just do that. But if you really feel like all of this halfway through this film when they've gotten lost and they have no idea where they are, and no matter what they do, they end up coming back to the same place. You really feel like they're just screwed because something out otherworldly has captured them, and so now they're just being toyed with, and it's just the end. I mean, I think that they do a really good job of arguing with each other. There's a point when Mike actually admits that he threw the map away because it wasn't helpful. And you're like, you don't know if he threw the map away because he genuinely was like, this is stupid and he wanted to sabotage the group, or if somebody
Hmm.
like if the Blair Witch had like possessed him with those thoughts, because there's a
Right.
lot of mistrust and distrust between the three of them by the end of it. And that also speaks to the level of loneliness and like fear that is happening for each of them. When she apologizes on camera, I mean, I get very emotional, and I know it's not real now, but I mean, I was so sad because she was like, "I'm scared. I'm so scared out of my mind. I'm scared to open my eyes. I'm scared to close them. I'm so terrified, and I am so sorry because I wanted to do this and I thought it was a good idea, and this is not." And it's that moment where that happens a lot in horror movies where these kids are just going out for a good time and they turn down the wrong road, or
Hmm.
and but it was so well done. I don't know why anybody would give I don't remember much criticism about Heather Donahue necessarily, as most people that criticized this film at the time I think were just jealous that they hadn't thought of it, because it's a really in theory it's a simplistic idea,
Hmm.
but it did so well. Like it's like compared to how much it cost to make, it's supposed to be like the highest grossing film of all time, like comparatively in return of investment or
Hmm.
whatever.
Yeah, I think the film itself was made. You see kind of varying reports, but they say between about like 30,000 and $60,000, and then after the was it the Sundance screening? Is that where it was screened at?
Hmm.
Uh,
Sundance.
yeah, it was purchased for from the filmmakers here for about $1 million, and then went on to gross like close to $350 million. So even taken into the the cost of like the marketing and creating the fake documentary about the fake documentary and all the advertising and things for it. I mean, it still cost well, less than $1 million, kind of total out of pocket here to come back with that kind of return. So I mean, that was amazing and incredible. And of course, when that happens, then you get like an immediate sequel, right? And I mean, they had to have like greenlit this thing like the day that the movie came out because it releases like basically 1 year later. You have the Blair Witch. What is the sequel, or the sequel is called The
The
Book
Book
of
of
Shadows,
Shadows.
Blair
Yeah.
Witch 2, which I actually also saw in the movie theater. I don't really remember it that well. I remember thinking that it wasn't that good. And I mean, that's tough because you have, this film, The Blair Witch Project, which is, this is the pseudo documentary kind of a thing. And Blair Witch 2 was just more of this, kind of traditional, like horror, the slasher kind of a thing, right? So I mean, they're not even like comparable, like apples to apples. So when you're holding one up against the other, so I don't think that even had Blair Witch 2 actually been any good, I still don't think it would have like been looked upon. And then there was also a kind of a reboot sequel, just titled Blair Witch, which came out in 2016. It also, didn't do gangbusters. A lot of people were excited, I guess, to be going back to kind of this world, I guess, in theory. But even though the other two were, definitely not as commercially successful and not as critically successful as the original one here. Both of those films also made like 3 times their budget, so Blair Witch did something right.
They did. Now, I want to talk about Blair Witch 2 because it came out and I mean, this film scared me. The first one scared me so bad. I mean, I was 18 when I saw this movie and I was still living at home. I was a senior in high school and I was so scared. I called my dad and I was like, I am not walking through the woods to get to my house, Dad. I'm going to stay with my boyfriend. And he must have known that I was not kidding because he said, okay. What dad would have let, I mean, my dad was really progressive, but even he was like, okay, you must be terrified because I like started praying a lot more. I was like, the Blair Witch is going to find me in the middle of the woods because I totally thought it was real. Oh, it's so sad now that I think that. But Blair Witch 2 had this really neat marketing piece. They kind of learned from the first way the Blair Witch came about, right? And so for the
Mhm.
second one, it was the Book of Shadows. And when it got to film, when you got to watch it on VHS, because back then that was a thing, or DVD, they had this thing called The Secret of Ezra. And so you would watch the movie, and there were these, if, well, at the beginning of the movie, there was this preview about it, and you had to rewind the preview to see these special clues that would then lead you to certain scenes that you would watch the movie in, and the things that happened in the movie, the words that would show up if you watched the film and paid attention. You could go to the Blair Witch 2 website, type in the um the message, and like it would be something be revealed to you. It turned out that that was a total
Said drink
waste
your
of time.
Ovaltine. That's what it
It
said.
didn't. It didn't. It was sort of similar because it was basically like, I will be watching you always, or some stupid shit like that, stuff like that. But I was totally into it. I watched the second one like a billion times. I watched the first one twice. Once the day it came out, for my birthday, and I never saw
Hmm.
it again
Hmm.
until the sake of this podcast because I was so terrified to revisit it. But the second one, I watched like 1,800 times. So I guess they're doing something right. Now, I never saw the reboot because I was so scared of the first one. I was like, I don't think I can handle it again. I don't think I can. Um,
Michaela's poor heart can't handle it. Yeah, I mean, I too remember going to see the Blair Witch Project in the theater because everyone went and saw it in the theater, right? Made 300 some $1 million, right? At the theater. It was like the 10th highest grossing film of the year, and Star Wars Episode 1 and The Matrix and The Sixth Sense all came out that year. So there you go there. Yeah, but I remember coming out of it, and you're kind of left like shocked, especially like how abruptly the film ends, right? You're left very like kind of numb because you're on this, this literal adventure kind of with these kids who get lost in the woods. And I remember kind of driving back home with my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, and she certainly does not live in the middle of the woods, but her house is kind of on a tree-lined sort of a thing, right? That goes out into a cornfield, very very Ohio sort of a vibe to it there. And she talked the entire drive home back from Columbus, the 40 minutes, about how it wasn't that scary of a movie until it came time to get out of the car and walk along that tree line into her house. And then two, the scares got ramped up a little bit from there. The Blair Witch, it was monumental when it came out. Like I said, it gets a lot of like flack now, and watching it back, it feels a little clunky, especially knowing that the legend of this thing is not true. But I think it's incredible. I think it's amazing. I think it's ingenious. I think it's so creative and so clever. It spawned a lot of things, right? Let's talk about that here, real quick, because it did spawn a lot of things. I mentioned the sequel to itself, which was not a found footage kind of a thing, but found footage became very kind of prominent, right? You had Paranormal Activity, which came out about 8 years later. You had Cloverfield. You had The Last Exorcism. Like all of those came out, kind of within the next decade, where movie studio executives who make 20 times the amount that these little college filmmakers put this thing together for were left scratching their heads and be like, why didn't we think of that? So
Hmm.
they immediately do start thinking of that and put out all of these things. Do you have like another like favorite one of these? Mine's probably Cloverfield. That kind of spawned its own kind of cinematic universe. But what do you think?
So Cloverfield I thought was really ingenious because that's also like a monster movie or a kind of um, disaster movie that's happening in real time. And I
Mhm.
really love the way that they film that. We should do an episode, a full episode to deep dive into that one because I really thought that that was ingenious. Um, I loved the original Paranormal Activity, which also is a different take on it because it's all static cameras that are in a person's home. Like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna put a camera up in my bedroom just to see what happens. Okay, cool.
If there was paranormal activity going on, you might.
I mean, look, okay. There- we're not going to cover that one because I'm going to make a whole lot of jokes about inappropriateness for that. But no, that doesn't make any sense. But it's a pretty good movie. I think that for me, like this was the beginning of that horror genre of like filming this record or rec is one of them that was um, super popular. It came out like a couple years after this. I don't know. But this one is clunkier because it's a lot more realistic, I think, because
Mhm.
it's not slick. And there's only a couple of good lines, like you said, where the guy's like, you know what? I'm just gonna be under this tree with the vine. You go find someone. I'll just stay here. Like, and it's funny. But when you think about like the reality of it, like if me and three people were stuck in the woods, I don't think I would be super clever by the end of it. I would probably be talking like a bumbling idiot as well. And
Mhm.
um, so I don't know. I really liked the realness and the grittiness of this. And it did spawn a lot of things. Cloverfield's probably in my favorite though of ones that it did spawn. That one is a lot slicker. Some of the guy's very quick who's got the camera, and it's only one person who's got the camera, so you have less air sickness, video sickness. I
Mhm.
think that that is one of the things that they did have to learn, though, is that the biggest piece of feedback that I ever got when talking about this film, and I really love to talk about it, was that people would leave the theater halfway through for like 5 minutes to go and like because they would get dizzy. They had to go and
Yeah.
like get their mind kind of away and their eyes away from the camera. And I think that so that has they've had to solve that problem in various creative ways while still being able to tell this idea of a story with handheld cameras.
Yeah, certainly there's an aspect of motion sickness that could take over you for sure if you're not careful or you're susceptible to that kind of a thing. And I would have to imagine that seeing this on the movie screen again now at my age versus when I would have seen it at 18 would be very different in terms of how well my stomach could handle that jostling. It did okay on my TV screen, but yeah, big wide huge movie screen. I don't know about that. So that is the Blair Witch Project. It's amazing. It's one of my all-time favorite kind of horror movies, and probably because it's something that hit like right as Michaela and I were going into like our senior year of high school. We were right at that perfect age to take this in, and it was kind of a new kind of a thing that really grasped on to kind of this world that we were living in, right? Things were starting to go viral. I don't know about you, Michaela, but I was going from my house, which had, dial-up internet, to my college, which had, its own like Ethernet thing. So like
Mm.
the internet was exploding for everyone at this time, and it was just kind of like this perfect like, kind of culmination of all of these things to come together for the Blair Witch Project. So let us know at home if you've seen this recently, if you saw the 2016 version. Let us know about that. I would love to know if people like that before I spend any time checking that out for myself. And let us know if you go to Geeks Who Eat. Geekswhoeat.com and check out the Black Eyed Stickman. It was a good cocktail, certainly worth giving a try. Or if you have another good Blair Witch cocktail, please send that our way. You can do any of that stuff on our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. If you want to see pictures of our cocktail, episode recaps, recipes, links to the merchandise shop, to Drink the video games, all that stuff can be found on our website. It's www.drinkthemovies.com. And if you want to support the podcast a little further and get a bunch of fun bonus stuff, you can go to patreon.com/Drink the Movies. We do cocktail chats, we do hangouts, we do bonus episodes. Everyone on Patreon gets the episode first. As soon as it's edited and ready to go, they get that there as well. And they get to get a sneak peek of our new episode format that we have coming in the not too distant future for special episodes. So, Michaela, they've been to the websites, they checked out the Patreon, they made up a Stickman cocktail. They're going to want to make sure that they're following along. We have a little bit of a blast from the past next week because we're going to be traveling, but we have a lot of fun stuff coming up here. A lot of new movies coming out in November and December. Where can people follow along with the pod?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported and distributed. We do 2 drops a week normally here at Drink the Movies. We do our lobby bars, which usually drop on Mondays. Box office, all things that are coming to you from a series perspective, as well as an easy cocktail that anyone, even you, can make. And then we do our deep dives like the one you just listened to. We are so knocked out that we get to do this every week. And if you are interested in video games, even if you're not interested in video games, you should go check Drink the Video Games out because it is amazing. Brian does a great job. We're doing a lot of Star Wars video games right now. And I always pop in for a cocktail, so that's a good time. But you should go check that out, and that's at Drink the Video Games.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much to everyone out there listening. This has been episode 240, The Blair Witch
Woo!
Project. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink
Drink the
the Movies.
Movies.
Look, there's people out there messing with us, and I'm not going to play with that. How do you even know it was people? Well, if it isn't, I'm not going to play with that either.
Fair point. Fair point.
No
That's why I don't
redneck is
go
this creative.
into the woods. Oh my gosh.